Very high-tech branding going on behind me. I'm really happy to be here, partly because I'm really happy to be free and out of captivity. A few weeks ago, I set my little stand-up alarm. I woke up at 3:30 in the morning. I'd learned that I could get out at 4 a.m. from this overnight little prison facility I've been in for 8 months. And I cleared out my locker, and I went to the front desk, and there was a sort of a sleepy-looking guard behind the counter. He's like, "What?" And I said, "Well, it's time to say goodbye." And so he fished out a garbage bag, which he handed to me, and I pulled all the sheets off my bunk bed and put it in there. And I was gone. I was done. So I came walking out. It was really dark. There were a couple of reporters waiting to see me, and one of them said, "Well, how does it feel?" And I said, "Well, I was actually reminded of something that Winston Churchill said during the Boer War. He said, 'It is always exhilarating to be shot at without result.'" And that's a little bit of how I felt getting out of captivity, because I've actually been in a pitched battle with the Obama administration, with the US government, for exceeding the campaign finance laws. So I want to talk for a moment about my crime. Why? Because I want to situate it in a larger debate about justice. When we think about our American debate, very often we as conservatives appeal to liberty. The other side appeals to justice, right? Listen to Obama, our fair share. Hillary talks about social justice. Now, justice is a very important principle in any community. In fact, it is typically the highest of all political principles. One of the reasons that we sometimes lose politically is that we play the king, liberty, and the left plays the ace, justice. The reason justice is such a powerful sentiment is because when we see injustice, it makes our blood boil. When you see deprivations of liberty, it doesn't make your blood boil. You often have to ask, why are they doing that? Because there could be a good reason why people are being deprived of liberty. Case in point, criminals. But when people are deprived of justice, it makes you angry. And the left knows this, and this is why justice is their thing. And part of what I want to do is to attack that thing and expose its grim underbelly. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my own situation as illustrative, but I'm going to then expand it and talk about the larger political situation facing our country. So I want to begin by actually talking about my crime. In 2012, my college friend Wendy Long was running for the US Senate in New York State. Wendy and I went to Dartmouth together in the early 1980s, and we are part of a group of conservatives that became very close friends and remained lifelong friends. So when Wendy asked me if she should run for the Senate, I said, "Wendy, I don't think you should do it. But if you decide to run," this was against a very well-funded incumbent, "I will try to help you." So Wendy decided to run, and I wrote her a check for $10,000, which is the campaign finance limit. I knew it was the campaign finance limit, and I wrote her the check for the maximum allowable contribution. And then as the year went along, her campaign was in financial stress, and I released the movie 2016. So I was running a college, promoting a movie, and Wendy, my dear friend, was calling me to say, "Dinesh, can you come speak at a fundraiser in New York? Can you meet these Indian doctors? They're Indian like you. I think they're going to give you money if they meet you. They're fans of yours." And I just felt really bad that I couldn't help her in all these practical ways that she was asking me to. So I got a cockamamie idea in my head. I called up two of my friends and I said, "Do you like Wendy Long?" They said, "Yes." So I said, "Write her a check for $10,000 and I'll reimburse you." This is not permitted. This is exceeding the campaign finance law. So this was actually my offense. I shouldn't have done it. But stressed and under, and in the chaos of the election campaign, this to me was a shortcut that I took that I should not have taken at all. Now, typically, when this happens and is discovered, your case is referred to the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, which has an equal number of Republican and Democratic members. Typically, it's resolved in a civil manner, because especially if you haven't done it before, you're not a professional fundraiser, or you're not doing it with a corrupt motive. The election laws exist to prevent people from buying office, from trying to use money to get something out of it for yourself. And in my case, my motive was not corrupt. I was giving money to a college friend because she was in need, and I couldn't help her. Now, what I should have done is I should have called a lawyer and given the money through a PAC. There actually are many legal ways to do what I did in the wrong way. And so what I did was, in fact, to break the law, and it was an offense that should be punished. But justice is not just a matter of did he break the law. Justice is a matter of proportioning the penalty to the offense. And justice is also a matter of people who are similarly situated, who have done the same thing, getting roughly comparable punishments. If you catch guys speeding on the highway and they're all going 90 miles an hour, they should all be getting roughly the same fine. If one guy gets a fine, another guy gets a year in prison, something is a little wrong. Now, to give you an idea of what is wrong, or what seems to be wrong in the situation, right around the time that my case was making its way through the courts, there was another case also making its way through the courts in New York, and this involves another Asian Indian guy. You can see which crimes we Asian Indian guys seem to specialize in: campaign finance violations. This other Asian Indian guy's name is Sant Chatwal. He's an Asian Indian of Sikh descent. In any case, he's a big fundraiser for the Democratic Party. He was convicted of giving, not as in my case, $20,000, but $180,000 in straw donations, convincing a whole bunch of people to give money and then reimbursing them. Same thing I did, except the amount was 9 times as large. Second, he was trying to buy influence. He actually was quoted saying publicly, you have to buy politicians. That's the only way they'll do what you want them to do. You got to pay them. And he was also convicted of witness tampering, which means that he was recorded, he was secretly recorded by the FBI telling witnesses to lie under oath. So he was corrupt, he had witness tampering, and his crime was far more serious than mine. His penalty? No prison, no confinement center. He got community service that's roughly half of mine, and he got 3 years probation while I got 5. So when you compare these two cases, you begin to see in its full glamour what can be called progressive justice. Progressive justice essentially is defined by a double standard in which the penalty when we do it is severe, and the penalty when they do far greater offenses is relatively minor. That makes the blood boil. And so, while the left is appealing to justice, we can actually question them on their own ground. So, some of you may have heard I was on Megyn Kelly recently to talk about my ongoing psychological counseling. I'm apparently proving to be a criminal who's extremely difficult to psychologically rehabilitate. And so, I am ordered to undergo non-stop counseling. Now, all of this started somewhat benignly because I was in a courtroom and a judge said, I thought a very sensible question. He said, hey, Dinesh, you're a smart guy. You're a successful guy. Why would you do something like this? Why would you actually break the law? I'm going to make you go to counseling to do some healthy self-examination to figure that one out. Now, counseling is actually something of a rarity in criminal penalties. Normally, you don't get psychological counseling if you get counseling if you're found with bodies in your refrigerator. That requires counseling. Exceeding the campaign finance limit, but nevertheless, I said to the judge, look, if it seems to puzzle you as to why I did what I did, let me just tell you about me. I mean, I'm an immigrant. I grew up in a different culture. At the age of 17, I packed my clothes into a suitcase and did something that I didn't even know I was doing at the time. I was basically bidding an eternal farewell to my parents, my brothers and sisters, my friends, my school, the whole world that I knew from birth. I was leaving, coming to a new society. And the condition of an immigrant is very interesting because you can almost think of it as a person who is walking on a tightrope between two buildings. The first building represents India. The second building represents the United States. And so the immigrant gets out and starts walking on the tightrope. And after a little while, you suddenly have this uneasy feeling that you've left your old country behind. You no longer belong to it. And yet, you are a long way from belonging to the new country. You haven't gotten there. You're not American. So you're in that no man's land. A rather terrifying vertigo sort of sets in which you can't really go back and you're scared to go forward. And I told the judge it was in this situation that I landed at Dartmouth. I made friends with a bunch of conservatives. They, in a sense, became my surrogate family. Fast forward 25 years, and when one of them was in trouble, was actually running for office, I thought it was my obligation to help. That's why I did it. So if you're looking for my motive, there it is. So the judge says, well, that's a very unsatisfactory motive. Off you go to counseling. And so I got a therapist, began to sort of recline on the couch, talk about my early toilet training, and other Freudian topics. Then a few months later, the judge said, well, he's being examined by a therapist, but that's not a medical psychiatrist. This guy might actually be needing medications. So I'm going to order that he take a battery of psychological tests to be examined by a medical psychiatrist. And so a renowned psychiatrist in New York did that and proclaimed me, you might find this a little hard to believe, perfectly normal. And then the judge said, well, but that was a psychiatrist in private practice. I wanted to have the process repeated by a government psychiatrist. So I went through another battery of tests, and the government psychiatrist took a look at me and somewhat surprisingly, again, concurred with the other psychiatrist that I was indeed perfectly normal. And then at the end of 8 months, my therapist wrote the judge a letter saying, our sessions have actually kind of run their course. This guy is actually terrifyingly normal. It's time to kind of stop this nonsense. But none of this took into account the fact that the judge, unknown to me, was actually a psych major in college. And so the judge said that no, despite 2 medical psychiatrists giving me the clean bill of health and my therapist, he, the judge, thought I could benefit from additional counseling, which is what I'm going to be undergoing. Now, the big issue over here is they want me to be contrite. They want me to actually repent. And the real question is to be contrite over what? I am contrite over my offense. I shouldn't have exceeded the campaign finance limit. I, in fact, looking back on it, have to pronounce myself one of the stupidest criminals in the history of American jurisprudence. Why? Because I was a public critic of Obama. I was letting him have it through my movies. I was, in a sense, driving him nuts. And this is not speculation, because I was being attacked by him on a website called barackobama.com. And if you actually read the attacks, they had that kind of almost distinctive combination of pomposity, windbaggery, vitriol, and incoherence that we've come to expect from our chief executive. Kind of had his fingerprints, you might say, all over it. So I should have known that I was going to be a target with a big fat target symbol on my back. That's what makes me kind of dumb. Nevertheless, here I am. I found myself in this confinement center. Now, a confinement center is not prison. Actually, I'm told in prison, you meet a much better class of people. Because if I went to prison, it's white-collar prison, and the typical guy in white-collar prison is some doctor who defrauded Medicare. It's typically some mayor who took payments on the side. In other words, it's white-collar guys, it's non-violent guys. But in the confinement center where I was ordered to sleep for 8 months, now, I wasn't there in the day. I only slept overnight. I checked in at 8 p.m., checked out at 6 in the morning. Now, those guys, however, are the whole gamut of criminals going all the way from nonviolent to maximum security. Anyone who's done their prison term before they go back to society goes into this transitional zone, a kind of halfway house or confinement center. So I found myself sleeping, you might say quite literally, with murderers, rapists, coyotes, drug smugglers, domestic violence, serious crimes, all kinds of stuff, the whole gamut. And initially, I was, well, initially I was frankly a little terrified because I'd never been in that environment. It was also a case where I realized there was a whole subculture going on there. Gangs, even the Hispanics who were the majority, you could never figure them out because they were divided into the US Hispanics, who are called Southsiders, and the Mexicans, who are arrested for across-the-border type offenses. And those two groups don't get along and are often segregated in the prison facility. So I thought to myself, look, listen, I don't want to be having lunch with one guy and it turns out he's a member of this gang and I've offended the other guys. And so I was super careful. The first month I basically spoke to no one. I just walk around. And I also realized, by the way, in fact, I told Megyn Kelly, I said, it's rather disturbing to me. I said, I can't start a gang because I'm the only Asian Indian in there. If I start a gang, I have to actually do all the offices myself. So, but after about a month, I began to feel a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more safe. And I realized that I was actually in a very unique environment. I mean, I was in an environment where probably very few of you will ever set foot in. I was in an environment where very few conservatives ever go. I mean, I'm not likely to walk in the confinement center and see George Will or Charles Krauthammer. So I said to myself, I'm sort of like an anthropologist in a strange land. I need to keep my eyes open. I need to learn some things. And so over the past 8 months, I have assimilated what I want to now call the criminal point of view. The criminal point of view is the criminal's take on society. Now, this point of view I initially thought would be anthropologically interesting, somewhat similar to if I found myself in Papua New Guinea. But little did I know that the criminal point of view would actually be extremely insightful in helping me to think about American politics. And in the rest of my talk, I'm going to assess American politics, you might say, from the ground up. So what's this criminal point of view? The criminal point of view I initially thought was going to be the point of view that you get, for example, in the Shawshank Redemption, which is all of us are innocent, none of us did it. But in fact, that is the point of view, at least to my knowledge, held by virtually no criminals. The criminal point of view is actually somewhat different. It is, we did it. We're guilty. But we are not the only guilty ones. Or to put it somewhat differently, we are the stupid criminals. We are the ones who got caught. The real criminals, you may say the big fry, we are the small fry, the big fry are still at large. The big fry, in fact, are never prosecuted by the system because the big fry actually are the system. The big fry are the criminals who have guns and SWAT teams and powerful lawyers and powerful agents at their behest. And so this idea comes out of a way that criminals tend to view society. Criminals, by the way, live, you may say, at the elemental level. So I'm lying in my bunk bed. Actually a fascinating experience because it almost threw me back to my days in India. Here I'm with a bunk bed, I have a locker. But I'm lying in my bunk bed, I'm listening to these guys talk every night, and I realize that their topics can be reduced to 4. Sleep, money, sex, and food. Those are the 4 topics of great interest. No other topics are of any interest whatsoever. Criminals live, you may say, at the ground level. Now, I had actually lived in a completely different universe. I come out of, you may say, the conservative intellectual universe of Dartmouth College, Policy Review, the Heritage Foundation, AEI, the Hoover Institution. And so, for 25 years, you may say I'd lived in idealistic America. And by idealistic America, I mean I'd been debating ideas. American politics is a clash between the Republicans and the Democrats. And the Republicans believe this, and the Democrats believe that. And the conservatives value opportunity, and the liberals value security. And we believe in equality of opportunity, and they believe in equality of outcomes. Blah, 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 blah. For 25 years. And the criminal point of view is that all of this high-flown talk is total and pure bullshit. That actually American politics is not motivated by any of that at all. That in fact, that is not even what motivates human beings to act. Human beings don't act based upon calculations, utilitarian comparisons of efficiency and justice. Rubbish. Of course, there is an idealistic strain in us, but the most powerful strains in us are greed, lust, avarice, envy, hatred, ecstasy, joy. That human beings are motivated by these powerful motors of emotion, and that for anyone to see American politics in any other way is to reveal yourself to be a naive ignoramus, not to see things the way they really are. Now, what's really interesting is that as I thought about that and began to apply it to politics to see what does that way of looking at things, by the way, this is not just a bunch of, you may say, well, there's a bunch of criminals. Obviously, they think like that. No. The criminal point of view is, you might say, the Machiavellian point of view. Machiavelli writes in The Prince, criticizing the ancients, that the problem with the ancients, he says, is that they constantly dwell on, quote, imaginary republics and principalities which have nowhere been known to exist. I.e., the ancients are obsessed with the world as it ought to be, whereas he, Machiavelli, is going to look straight at the world as it is. And so the idea of looking at the world as it is, a very refreshing point of view, I think, in looking at American politics. So let's do that for the next few minutes. The liberals, when they look at us, always attack our motives. You conservatives are greedy. You're selfish. You're materialistic. You're warmongers. You just like your guns because you're inherently, you have an inherent tendency to violence. You're homophobic. You're sexist. And the list goes on. You, in short, are a fundamentally bad guy and should be dealt with as such. Now let's turn to the conservative view of liberalism as we have heard it over the last few decades. And here is the conservative view as I would summarize it. Liberals, you are well-meaning but misguided. You have excellent intentions, but the results are not proportionate to what you actually seek. Consequently, we conservatives appoint ourselves as your tutors. We're going to be writing lengthy op-eds and instructing you in the way the world really is. And so you have all this conservative commentary, oceans of it, instructing Obama on things that he actually already knows. Hey, Obama, has it occurred to you that Vladimir Putin used to be a KGB officer? Hey, Obama, if the Iranians say that they want a nuclear bomb, don't you think that they actually want a nuclear bomb? Hey, Obama, if you have confiscatory tax rates, isn't that going to unmotivate people from working really hard? And on and on and on. And we've been doing this now for 8 years, and we're a little surprised that Obama hasn't actually nodded his head and gone, gee, guys, you know, you kind of have a point. I never thought of that. Great idea, guys. It never happens, and it never happens on campus. You're always instructing your liberal friends, and they continue to march the way they think. So at some point, being intelligent people, it should occur to you that maybe something else is going on. It's kind of like sometimes I'll bring my 20-year-old daughter, I'll talk to her, and she's upset about something, and I address it, but it occurs to me soon enough that what she's actually upset about is not what she's saying. There's something deeper going on, and if I don't get to that, I'll never actually be able to solve the problem. So what's going on here on the political side is we interpret our opponents in the way that the writer Saul Bellow years ago called that they are the managers of the good intentions paving company. They have good intentions. They just don't realize that that leads the wrong way. I want to give you a different way of thinking about American politics, one that to my view is much closer to how politics really is. And if the Republicans were to embrace this way of thinking, they would do much better than they do now. I go to all these Republican events, I meet these Republican operatives, you know, and you know the type. I mean, got name tags and their hair looks kind of straggled, and they're like, you know, polls show that more people identify as conservatives than as Republicans, as liberals. I think if we can get the data out through some commercials. And I'm like, what planet are you living on? And this is our team. So let's try to do briefly, because our time is limited, let's try to do a short, different way of looking at American politics. Not from the 25,000 foot up, from the ground. Now, let's imagine a guy who's working in an office. He's adding up numbers for a living, or he's wiping floors. And this guy going home at night. He walks out of his office in Boston or in St. Louis or in San Francisco or right here, Washington, D.C., and he passes one of those beautiful restaurants in Adams Morgan or on K Street. He looks in through the glass, and he sees all these people, and they're all eating steaks and pouring nice wine, and limousines are pulling up and on. And he looks at all the people in there who look really happy, and he goes, what the heck? What's going on here? Where's my American dream? Why is it that they are in there, and I am out here? My home's underwater. I can't pay my credit card bills. And at this particular moment, he begins to feel that very powerful human emotion called envy. Envy. Now, envy is the deadliest of all human emotions. It is, in fact, the worst of all human emotions because there's nothing positive in it whatsoever. Every other vice has in it something positive. Lust is the pursuit of pleasure. It can be done in the wrong way, but pleasure itself is not bad. Anger is a vice. It's one of the 7 deadly sins. But Aristotle says to be angry with the right person at the right time, in the right way, and for the right reason is very good. Jealousy, which is often confused with envy, but is actually not envy at all. Look at the play Othello. Othello is jealous. Why? Because he thinks his wife is unfaithful to him. He's actually mistaken about that. She's not. But if she were, he would have a right to be angry. So jealousy is the anger at being deprived of something to which you have a legitimate right. Envy is anger at being deprived of something to which you have no right whatsoever. Othello is jealous, but Iago, the villain of the play, is envious. And Iago says of Cassio, he hath a daily beauty in his life that makes me ugly. What is Cassio taking away from Iago? Nothing. He's just a good guy. But because he's a good guy, Iago hates him. And the key to envy is not, I want to pull myself up. It is, I would like to pull myself up, but if I don't know how to do that, I would rather pull the other guy down. That's the key to envy. So the guy standing outside the restaurant, if he thought like this, hey, look at all those people, they're doing so great. They're all innovators in Silicon Valley, or they've started new businesses, or they're executives in corporations. I should go back to school. I should think of better ideas. I should start my own business. That's not envy. That's emulation. That's good. But if he says, I hate that guy. I don't want him to be doing better than me. I'm going to pull him down if I can. That is the disgusting, destructive emotion of envy. I will actually take pleasure in seeing him pulled down. Schadenfreude, pleasure in the misery of somebody else. Powerful human emotion in its own right. Now, this kind of envy not only leads to hatred, but it also leads to self-hatred. It leads to self-hatred because in a meritocratic society, when you see successful people, you realize that you could have been one of them. You could have done it. You could have thought of that idea for a business. You could have come up with that app. You could have come up with that new way of organizing information, but you didn't, and he did, or she did. In other words, their success is a reminder to you that you suck. And this is a very difficult recognition for people. It's not like the old days. In the old days, if you were a peasant or a serf in a feudal society and you saw some other guy doing better than you, you didn't have to say to yourself, I suck, because you don't suck. You just got the short end of the stick. You're a serf because your dad was a serf. He is the lord of the manor because his father was the lord of the manor. He didn't do anything to deserve that. But in a meritocratic society, you could have started Facebook. You could have made the iPhone. In other words, this is a society in which the greatest rewards go not only to people who satisfy consumer demand, but the people who anticipate that demand before people even have it. The genius of the supply-side entrepreneur is to envision wants and needs prior to customers even having them. Now, here's the guy outside the restaurant, steaming, angry with society, angry with other people, angry with himself. And who should show up at this very point but a man dismounting on a horse with a little name tag that merely states community organizer. And this person, an Obama type, basically says to that guy, I have a solution to your problem. But before I even tell you the solution, I have to reinterpret your problem. Your problem is that you're blaming yourself for your own lack of achievements. You're blaming yourself for being in the position you are. But you're not actually envious, my friend. You are righteously indignant. And the reason you're righteously indignant is all those guys sitting in that restaurant, look at them, they have been stealing from you. They are in possession of your stuff. I, Obama, am here as a restorer of stolen goods. I want you to do something, and it's not a big thing. You don't need to lead a Marxist revolt. You don't have to be a proletariat. You don't have to go carry out a revolution. You just have to vote for me. I and my goons will then go and get their stuff, and I will give some of it to you. Now, this is ordinarily, in a democratic society, not an easy thing to do. Because in a democratic society, you need the consent of people to pull off this kind of a heist. But the left has, over the past 30 years, been building powerful institutions in the media, in entertainment, and in higher education. And these are, you may say, the propaganda vehicles, the bullhorns, that are used in order to convince people or intimidate them, put them up against the wall, so to speak, to enable this transfer of wealth to take place. In other words, what goes on here is before you commit a heist, some of you may have seen the movie The Sting, or recent movies in that genre. These are people who are pulling off a heist, but a heist needs a pitch. A pitch is a scam. It's a story. It's a way to put everyone on the defensive. It's kind of like if someone wants to come and rob your house, they come in first dressed as cops. They go, madam, there's been a report of a burglary. Step aside. We have to look at your house. And that's the pitch. The moment you step aside, you have enabled the heist to take place. The moment you kept your door jammed and didn't remove the hook, you were actually safe. So the pitch is a rhetorical device to get you to open the door. And the pitches that we hear in our society are very clever. Very clever. I'll just give you one very brief one, which is essentially lifted from Karl Marx. No one puts a Marxist label on it, but Marx came up with it, and it's a super ingenious pitch. It goes like this. When you create wealth, when you start a company, any company, Ford Motor Company, the company relies on capital, and it relies on labor. Capital is the money, and Marx called the people who have the money capitalists. Labor is the people who do the work. They run the assembly lines, they drive the trucks, and so on. So Marx says, who actually made the truck? Labor did. Capital supplied the money, and money is worth something, but money is only worth what you get when you put it in the bank. If the bank pays you 2% interest, that's what money is worth. That's what the capitalist should receive, 2%. But Marx says, in fact, what the capitalist does, the businessman, is he bargains with the laborer and brings the laborer's wage as low as he can. Enough only really for the laborer to make ends meet. But then he charges for the product a much higher price, which is going to give him a much larger sum of money, greater than that he requires to pay his costs and pay the laborer. And that difference is called profit. And Marx calls it surplus value. And Marx says, who gets that? Marx's argument is, that belongs to the laborer, because he or she made the car. But the greedy capitalist descends in serpentine fashion, grabs the profit and keeps it for himself, stealing it from the laborers. A crime of injustice. Obama's "you didn't build that" is simply a kind of 7th grade version of the argument I've just outlined. It's that you, the entrepreneur, did not create wealth. You might have supplied some capital, but workers and the infrastructure of society that provided you with the roads and fire services and the GPS system and the initial federal funding of the internet, all that infrastructure enabled you to do what you do. This is an argument, but it's also a very clever pitch. It's a clever pitch because the typical entrepreneur, when he listens to it, does not know what to say. And the typical Republican candidate, when he hears it, does not know what to say. And this is why the left advances systematically, because its arguments appear unanswerable. They appear to have real power. Now, because of the limits of time, I'm going to pivot a little bit here and talk a little bit about us and our peculiar situation right now. Because it seems to me, most of my career, like I said, I've been a think tank guy, I've been a writer, I've been a speaker. But I realized that while we're doing our little huddle, everywhere I go, people go, what do you think about the Republican field? Who do you think is the new Reagan? Who do you support for the presidency? Now, first of all, my mind flashes back to when I first came to America, the early years of Reaganism, and I realized that this whole idea of waiting for Reagan, for someone to come sweeping in and tell us what to do and how to do it, it's not going to happen. It didn't actually happen with Reagan either. All the ideas of Reagan, what we call Reaganism, preceded Reagan. SDI, missile defenses, was being discussed by General Daniel Graham in the late 70s. Supply-side economics was being promoted by Jack Kemp. The idea of the Reagan doctrine was advanced by Gene Kirkpatrick. And on down the list you go. Every single one. And Reagan came along and he's like, I'd like to be president. Now, I like this, I like this, I like this, I like that. Reaganism. In short, we're never going to get a leader, ever, who comes along and tells us this is going to be our platform, this is going to be our ideas. No, we have to generate the ideas. And our ideas have to compete effectively in the market. And then our candidate, who will be little more than an articulate opportunist, a very ambitious man. Even of Lincoln, his law partner said his ambition was a little engine that knew no rest. Nothing wrong with that. We want ambitious people in a democratic society. They're going to opportunistically look around to which ideas out there are going to help them get to where they want to go. We've got to help them get there. That's number one. Number two, what's changed since Reagan is that the left has had a very successful 30-year long march through the cultural institutions of our society, namely the media, entertainment, by which I mean Hollywood and Broadway, the universities, and the elementary and secondary schools. They have controlled that dialogue. They don't have a monopoly, but they certainly have a dominant voice. And our voice has grown ever more dim. So it seems to me that quite apart from this little huddle in which we're all in, who's the candidate you favor, the truth of the matter is there's a much wider battlefield going on. And if we abandon it to the other side, a lot of issues will be decided in the culture long before they even get to politics, so that by the time the political vote is held, the issue is completely irrelevant. I've become, in recent years, a filmmaker, which I never was before. I've done documentary films, and I'm now going into feature films. I'm trying to create new institutions in education. Why? Because this is where the left is really strong. And this is actually what our side, in my opinion, needs the most. We don't actually need simply to join and flush the ranks of existing institutions, because existing institutions are by and large doing what they're doing. So if you think of yourself as an entrepreneur of ideas. Think of yourself not in terms of which group can I go to, but rather what needs to be done. Totally different question. What needs to be done? Is it being done? If it's not being done, what can I do to enable that to happen? So for example, right now, as far as I can see, there is no effective mode of communication that speaks in a contemporary voice to young people and articulates conservative principles effectively. It doesn't exist. When I was a student, the conservative point of view was heard. It was a minority point of view. But now I meet young people, and the reason they're not conservative is not because they've rejected it. They just don't even know what it is. They don't know what possible reason anyone could have for thinking this way. They don't believe that there's even an intelligent thought behind it. In fact, we're sort of back to the 1950s when Lionel Trilling wrote that liberalism is a set of ideas and conservatism is a set of angry twitches and bodily reactions. And that's all it is. And that's what a lot of young people think. They run away from it because to them it's toxic. It's inconsistent with them trying to become adults and learn more. So what is being done to combat this? Well, you're in the best position to know, and you're in the best position to do something about it. I mean, I speak on universities all the time, but ultimately it's going to be young people who sway young people. And so think of creative ways that you can do that. We're actually in a much stronger position than we think. Years ago, one of my professors told me the story about the lion tamer and the lion. So here's the lion sitting on a kind of a podium, kind of like here. And there's the lion tamer with his little stick. And the lion tamer twirls his little stick. And the lion obediently prances to the stick. And the professor's question was, who is actually more powerful, the lion tamer or the lion? Well, it's obviously the lion. But in that case, we have a conundrum. If the lion is more powerful, why is the lion so sycophantically and obediently dancing to the machinations of this lion tamer? And the simple answer to that is because the lion does not recognize its own power. The lion doesn't know that the lion is more powerful. The lion thinks the lion tamer is stronger. And that's the position in which we are as Americans. The power is actually with us. And even in a group, in this room, there's enormous concentrated power. Most people use a very small fraction of the influence they actually have. You have much more potential energy than you're converting into political energy. Lincoln once said, America is ruled by public opinion. But he didn't mean by the opinions of the public. The ordinary guy doesn't care. He votes once every 2 or 4 years if it isn't raining. But you guys who do care, who have your hands on the process, who write blogs and do Facebook and communicate your ideas and come to conferences, you are the subset of the public that actually sets the goalposts of American politics. You're one of a group of probably only 100,000 people. Those are the people who are actually shaping politics. And you're one of them. So the point is, your influence as an American is 10, 20, or 50 times greater than that of the ordinary citizen just because you're involved. You've chosen to become involved. And so my thought is, be creative in thinking about using that influence. We're in a big fight, and the other side is much more determined than we are. I'll end on this. Just think about the Supreme Court. People say, well, isn't the problem with the Supreme Court that we've lost the balance of power between the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary? No, that's not the problem with our society. The problem with the Supreme Court is very simply this. They can count on the vote of their guys, and we can't count on the votes of our guys. They have 4 liberals on the court. Everyone else on the court is on our team. But we can't count on our team. Our team's a maybe. Are we going to get Kennedy? Oh, we got Kennedy, but whoops, we lost Roberts. This is our predicament. What does this mean? This means that they are playing to win, and we are playing for fun. We are playing field hockey, and they're trying to take the country. There's a disproportion of enthusiasm, determination, and fanaticism on the two sides. And so our side can win, but we kind of need to wake up. We're in a big, fat slumber, which begins with the RNC and continues through the ranks. It's a kind of sleepy acedia that basically says we're losing the country and we don't know what to do about it. So let's at least try to, I don't know what. But I don't think that way. And you shouldn't either. So ultimately, it's a battle we can win. You're part of that team. And let's make it, shall we, a winning team. Thank you very much. Thank you. Guys, we have some time for questions, and be delighted to answer some. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Christian Westerkamp. I'm going to Cal State Fullerton in the fall as an incoming freshman. But first of all, I wanted to just thank you for the movie that you made. It's an excellent movie. It was my first time watching it last night. But I wanted to know, because the 2 weeks before this, I was spending my time with artists at a Cal State University artistry program, and everyone there that I've met throughout my life is very liberal and very profound socialists. So I wanted to know, since most success stories of capitalism are based off of innovation, business, law, and medicine, what can artists look forward to in a free market economy, and how can they benefit from it, since it is one of the most influential sources of the people and it is already so liberal?
So, good question. It's about artists and about art. And just think about it, as a movement, we will have lost a great deal if art is a province of the left. Or if journalism is a province of the left. Now, the reason that journalism and art have become provinces of the left is because journalism and art have been redefined in a way that serves the leftist agenda. So, for example, traditionally journalism was not adversarial journalism. Traditionally journalism was an attempt to put a mirror on society so that the citizens could see what's going on. The whole idea of the journalist as a crusader, as a humiliator, that came out of Watergate. That was the Woodward and Bernstein species of journalism that became so powerful that it actually became journalism. Now, as conservatives, by the way, we can benefit from that. In other words, we can say that there's an adversarial journalism of our own that we can embrace. Because sometimes when the culture changes, you can't take it back. You always have to surf on the wave. So if the wave is going here, get your surfboard ready. Art. Art comes out of creativity. Art is a product of freedom. Art is a product of inner self-expression. We as conservatives should embrace those things, right? The freedom and creativity of our society, that's part of the free. We don't just believe in free markets. We also believe in free minds. We believe in free association. We believe in the free society. So contrast the innovation that's possible in that society. Art is a form of innovation. Or to put it differently, products are a utilitarian form of art. Think of the iPhone. It's super artistic, and the genius of Jobs is that he's not only an entrepreneur, but also an artist. We should actually encourage entrepreneurs to be more artistic, and that's going to make them do better, because they appeal not only to our need for certain things, but for the beauty of them. Honestly, I believe the whole movement that is epitomized by Whole Foods and health foods and all that is a form of art. It's basically saying to you, turn your life into a work of art. And I think many of us think of our lives in those terms. So as conservatives, again, we should not run away from these ideas, but figure out how we can selectively and creatively embrace them. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Hannah Howard. I'm a senior at Thomas More College of Liberal Arts. You mentioned earlier that there was some merit to the law that you broke, namely that it would protect from corruption in public office. Do you have a critique or suggestion for reform to that law that would allow sincere individuals to donate larger sums of money but still protect from corruption?
That is an excellent question on which I'm going to maintain, and this is very rare for me, a complete and decorous silence. And the reason for this is I am under judicial scrutiny. And so I don't actually want to comment on the merits of that law, because in my current position, if I say something critical about the law, they're going to say, you broke the law because you didn't care about the law, you don't even believe in the law. Let me just say that I believe that laws should be, whether we think that they're right or wrong, they should be followed. They are our laws. And in that sense, here's a law. Without commenting on the merits of it, I did exceed the campaign finance limit. I should receive the same penalty that everyone else who does what I did receives. That's my comment on that case for now.
Thank you.
My name is Garrett Atkinson. I'm a student at Women College. I just want to first off start by saying that I'm a great fan of your work, and I'd like to thank you for speaking to us today. One of the main themes that we've heard from you as well as other speakers throughout the week and in your video is that liberalism, particularly in terms of government spending, is self-perpetuating in a way. In other words, as you know, liberals can get votes by handing out money to citizens who then become dependent on the free but unsustainable handouts. It seems to me to be an almost kind of impossible question to answer, but how can we kind of combat this effect?
How can we combat it? The best way to combat something, the starting point of it all, is to accurately describe what is actually happening, right? So let me just deconstruct what you just said. Handouts are unsustainable, right? Let's say they were sustainable. Let's say we were a super rich society, we could keep giving people stuff for free. Would that be a good idea? No. So the problem with the handouts is not that they're unsustainable. The problem with the handouts is something more fundamentally wrong with what liberalism is doing. It's not even that liberalism is wasteful. It's not that it's inefficient. It's not that it is pork barrel. liberalism, I say, previewing a book I'm going to publish this fall, is a form of systematic theft of the wealth of the country. Okay? There's a secret war going on in America between the wealth creators on the one hand and an envious, avaricious, and extremely clever class of people who have their eyes on that wealth for the same reason that thieves have their eyes on the bank. And they're figuring out clever ways through the political process of stealing that wealth. I don't mean the wealth of the federal government. I mean all the wealth of the country. Every industry from banking to cars to energy, they want all of it. And they're taking it now, right? So for us to sit around talking about government waste and it's not an incentive, think about trying to persuade a thief not to rob a bank because it will reduce the incentive of people to put money in the bank, right? Don't tax people so high because it'll reduce people's incentive to work. Well, a thief doesn't care about that. He doesn't care what the resources of the bank are. He's not concerned about the macroeconomic effects of the theft. He just wants to get his hands on the cash, right? If that's what's going on, then our response to it is delusional, correct? I may be wrong in describing the problem, but if I'm right, then our whole response makes no sense because we're acting like this is an honest debate over things like, is it really good for 49 million people to get food stamps? Are that many people hungry? So we're debating this kind, and the left loves this. They love us to sit around scratching our heads and counting the number of people who are hungry and going and looking at their shacks and seeing if they really, what their caloric intake is and so on. But if you realize that that's actually not what's going on at all, that's designed to fool you. Something else is going on that's far more clear, actually rather obvious. Take the national debt, and I'll close on this. Obama has basically doubled the national debt in 7 years. Quite an accomplishment, you have to say. In fact, for those people who say Obama's a bungler, I beg to differ. He's super successful in achieving the things he wants to achieve. He's doubled the national debt. What is he doing? Well, I like Obama because actually he's been forgiving my student loans. He's been forgiving your student loans? How? He's forgiving your student loans by essentially adding to the national debt. Who's going to be paying off the national debt? You are, right? So he's taking your money from the debt and returning it to you and, quote, forgiving your student loans. This national debt, as I say, $8.5 trillion from George Washington to George W. Bush, and Bush was a big spender. But what were $200 billion deficits under Reagan, annual deficits, have become monthly deficits under Obama. Obama is massively ripping off the younger generation to benefit his cronies. He's performing a heist unlike any in history. He's doing it right in front of your eyes. The most amazing thing is he has the actual victims of the heist on his side, which is actually a first for criminals. If you rob a bank, normally the bankers aren't with you, unless they're co-conspirators. So this is the actual brilliant accomplishment of liberalism, to steal from people with their own evident consent, or at least with their own indifference. So your job now, don't even worry about, is to blow the whistle. If you get people to actually understand what's going on, it's going to stop. You think if all the young people in the country realized they were being stolen from in a systematic way, they'd sit back and go, yeah, keep doing it. No, but they don't know that. So you are actually, as Malcolm Gladwell puts it, a tipping point of information to get that knowledge out of people. And I'm doing what I can. But I think it's probably fair to say, if you've been listening here, that I'm speaking to you in a different voice than you hear any of the Republican candidates speak in, and you typically hear at the RNC. This is a different talk, but it's the way conservatives need to talk. It's straight talk without BS, describing the world as it is. And finally, it's not ideological talk. I have used the words left and right, but this hasn't been fundamentally a partisan address. This is an address that, the reason I like speaking on campus when I do, I don't do a whole lot of it, but when I do, is I like to talk to young people straight in a language that they understand and in a language that resonates with academia, in the intellectual language that young people are being trained because they respect that language. So as conservatives, we have to speak in that language. If you do, I think you'll find that this conservatism, the principles we believe in are super attractive. I've been teaching, I'll close on this, I've been teaching Hispanics, about 120 of them for the last 8 months. My community service. I teach introductory English, intermediate, and advanced. These guys, first of all, they're like the criminals in that they're not worried about liberty and justice. I can't talk to them about the US Constitution. They want to learn English because they want to figure out how to get to the bus. Or they work in Target and now they want to be promoted, but if they're promoted, they have to send emails. And if they send emails, they have to know English. So they are trying to come up in American society. Our job as conservatives, as Republicans, is to say, we believe in the ladder of opportunity. We are actually going to be the ones standing there and holding the ladder. The other side is going to kick the ladder out and then lower down some food for you to be able to pick up at the bottom end. Two very contrasting ideas of America, and quite frankly, we don't care. It's which do you want? Do you want a ladder of mobility up which you can climb so you can have dignity, self-respect, and earn success? Or do you want to be a leech and a freeloader and ride in the bandwagon and believe me, human dignity is such, we always think, well, obviously if you want to be free. No, human dignity is such that there's a certain self-degradation in doing that, which people know. So we should have faith in people. Reagan had faith in people and make arguments to them that respect them as dignified human beings who want to succeed, but who also want self-respect and pride and dignity and love. If we look at politics in that larger context, politics supplies the foundation and the scope to be able to be the architect of your own life. At the end of my term today, if you brought my students in the room and had a vote right now, Obama versus me, I doubt that man would get a single vote. Why? Not because I've been selling them R is for Republican. No, it's because they actually know the story of my life. They watched my movies. 2016, most of it's in the third world. That's their life. And they look at that and they go, look at this guy. Look at what he's accomplished. We would love our kids to be more like him. And at the end of the day, that's what is going to bring people to check that R box in the booth. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great. We are now going to take a break. During this time, Dinesh D'Souza has been kind enough to agree to sign the movies that we gave to each of you. That signing will be in the back room over here, so if you would like to do so now, you can make your way to the movie signing.